Am I in the wrong for cutting off my friends? Hello, everyone. This is really long, but I don't have many unbiased people to confide in. I honestly want to know if I'm wrong because I'm always looking to improve myself and be perceptive to others. I appreciate whoever reads this and responds honestly. To start, I'm an introverted 26F and a survivor of almost 20 years of domestic abuse, both physical and emotional. As a result, I deal with depression, PTSD, and generalized anxiety disorder. I've gone to therapy and have recently started going again. I recently had a panic attack with symptoms similar to cardiac arrest, so I've been trying to take it easy. I also have social anxiety. At its peak in college, I didn't leave my room for up to a week, skipped classes, stopped eating, and didn't even shower. I've improved so much since then, and I'm proud of myself because it's been so hard with the regular trials and tribulations of life. I moved back to my hometown about 7 to 8 months ago after living in another country for a year. Since moving back, all of the old triggers have returned. I was kicked out of my childhood home in an extreme way. Before I moved back home, my parents promised the household would be more calm and stable. The day after I arrived at the airport, my dad was fired from his job. The next day, I was kicked out. My father beat me and put all my stuff out on the curb. It got so bad I had to run out of the house barefoot because my dad was so angry I wasn't sure what he was capable of. This situation took a huge toll on my mental health because it was so traumatic. Anyway, my close friends know about my abusive background because sometimes I act in ways that I can't explain. People consider me quiet, shy, and occasionally intimidating or nonchalant. Introducing the close friends I've cut off, Aloe and Poppy. I have been friends with them since high school, almost 10 years now. We used to hang out every single day back then. Even in adulthood, we see each other up to 4 times a week and go on trips. We go to the gym together at least twice a week. At that gym, there's a group of about 10 people they hang out with. I don't like to be too friendly, and I'm not open to making new friends right now due to past traumas and my emotional instability. So I'm usually just cordial with this new friend group. They often organize camping/backpacking trips to Yosemite and other surrounding areas. One member of that friend group is a guy who bullied me in middle school, Phoenix. He has completely turned around since that time and is now a friend. I was cautious about accepting him, but he continued to be a positive person whenever I was around him. He even sincerely apologized to me for bullying me, which made me cry haha. So Aloe, Poppy, and Phoenix always go on these camping trips with the friend group and have tried to convince me to join more than 4 to 5 times since I've never been to Yosemite or backpacking. I was always hesitant because the friend group didn't give me the best vibes, but I sometimes feel I'm just overly sensitive and recognize I need to open myself up more. Eventually, Phoenix personally invited me to an upcoming 3-day backpacking trip. Since I built up a bit of rapport with the friend group, I was a little more comfortable with accepting the invitation and perhaps making new friends. He gave me a month's notice, which was the perfect amount of time to mentally prepare. Aloe was also going on the trip, though Poppy couldn't. Aloe and Poppy reassured me that I would be all right because Aloe would be there to talk to me. Aloe and Poppy had a separate conversation about my social anxiety and how sometimes I need someone to bring me into the conversation. I never made this request, but I appreciated the effort. The day of the trip, I had a dentist appointment for pain and ended up getting my cavity fillings changed. So my entire mouth was in pain right before heading out to Yosemite. It was about a 4-hour drive and Aloe drove me. The drive there was nice even though it was nighttime. We were both tired but had a nice conversation the entire drive as usual. During the drive, I mentioned my social anxiety to her and how I was nervous about talking with the group. Again, Aloe reassured me. The backpacking group consisted of 8 people, 2 couples, couple A, couple B, single girl, Yosemite newbie, friend of couple B, Phoenix, Aloe, and me. For some reason, they chose to hike to the camping area at 10:30 p.m. This is my first backpacking trip, so I had no idea what to expect and didn't have much information about the trip beforehand aside from a packing list. We got there, and it was pitch black. They started by drinking and getting high. I took a shot to be festive, but I was nervous about hiking at night with a heavy pack. We had headlamps, and everyone had a red light mode except for me and the single girl since we are noobs. Phoenix had an extra for me, so I tried using the red light. Phoenix and Aloe offered to lead the group since they were more experienced and suggested the newbies follow behind them. They started by jetting into the darkness and I couldn't find them, so I stayed in the back of the group after that. That could have been a point of contention because asked me to come back up, but I refused since I was uncomfortable with their spontaneity. The path itself was incredibly narrow, next to a drop-off, and loose rock and muddy patches. I wear glasses and my vision isn't the best. So I put my headlamp around my neck like a necklace and had the white light shine at my feet so I could better see where I was stepping. Also, the single girl had an additional hand flashlight that she shined at the ground to better see as well. Not even 10 minutes into the hike, the girl from Cupola says, "You guys have your bright-ass lights and it hurts my eyes." There are only 2 people with white lights. We both ignored her. She repeated it 2 more times on this almost 3-hour hike. The 3rd time I told her, "I'm sorry I can't see well. If I could use the red light I would." Then she and her boyfriend got defensive. I just ignored it. Right before we picked an area to camp, Coupleby had the great idea of crossing a flowing stream as a shortcut. I would have preferred going around, but everyone had already crossed the stream except Phoenix and me. As a result, everyone had their feet soaked, which was a great start to the trip. We picked a camping area. Aloe and I would share a tent. From this point, Aloe started acting noticeably distant. She wasn't talking to me like she normally would, but I thought she was just tired. I told her my shoes were soaked and I probably couldn't wear them tomorrow after she asked me how the hike was. I didn't bring an extra pair of shoes. She had no response and just left the tent. That's how night 1 went. Day 2, we all woke up pretty early. I just stayed in my sleeping bag because Couple A was talking at full volume at 6 a.m. with no regard for everyone else sleeping. Aloe was next to me and I knew as soon as I heard Phoenix's voice that she would leave her sleeping bag and go outside. Then it happened, haha. I stayed in the tent for up to an hour. Phoenix came over to me and asked why I wouldn't leave. I told him my shoes were soaked and I put them in the sun to dry. Phoenix was kind enough to let me wear his flip-flops so I could move around camp, and I mentioned I told Aloe. But she said, "I didn't hear you." Finally, I came out and sat on a rock in the sun because I get cold easily. Everyone else sat in the shade. I didn't try to separate myself from the group. It was just chilly, but I was an earshot away from the group conversation. I had to keep reminding myself to push and try to be a part of the group. I need to put myself out there is what I kept chanting in my head. I went in with the best intentions to try and make friends. Also, when I was a kid, I would go to a summer camp for about 2 weeks to a month. I'm also half Native American and our culture has a deep reverence for nature, so I love the outdoors. The day continued and Aloe seemed to gravitate more towards Couple A than me. With them, she would laugh and converse well, but with me, it was one-word answers or a serious tone. I hung out with Couple A and tried to talk to the single girl, but they didn't receive me well. I tried to be a little overly friendly too by complimenting their tent or commenting on their interests. Coupleby didn't even bother talking to me, and the girl just told stories about her life while everyone listened. This group seemed to be hyper-fixated on camping or dick joke topics. Those aren't my strong conversation points where I can jump in easily. I tried to add in or start a conversation, but everyone would just stare at me or smile and nod or give a curt response, even Aloe. The only person who would talk to me normally was Phoenix. By the day's end, I almost gave up because you can tell when people aren't interested in getting to know you. Not one time did someone ask my name or ask me a question about myself, except Phoenix. Yet I did that, and I knew everyone's name before coming there. I tried to talk to Aloe normally, but she seemed like she was irritated/annoyed by me. I know what it's like to feel left out and excluded, so I would never want anyone in my presence to feel that way if they don't deserve it. So I prioritized knowing people's names and acknowledging them, especially shy people. Day 3. We would be leaving by 10 a.m. I got ready for breakfast and packed all my stuff as soon as I woke up while everyone else mingled and shuffled around camp or went on a short hike. Aloe was unresponsive to me at this point. I tried to add to the group conversation, but everyone ignored me once again. Phoenix tried to bring me into the conversation more than once, but everyone would just stare at us while we talked. No one would chime in or contribute when I was the center of conversation. I tried my best to not look upset or pout because I didn't want to affect anyone else's mood or seem like I wasn't having a nice time. Later, everyone went to climb some nearby boulders. Aloe invited me once and I said no and she walked away. Phoenix was the only one who came back to ask if I wanted to come with everyone. I hung out by myself for like 3 hours and enjoyed nature alone. After that, we packed up camp and hiked back to the car. From this point, I was pissed at Aloe for her behavior. She grouped with everyone else and excluded me, even though we discussed my hesitancies about this trip and my social anxiety more than once. She acted like Riley from Inside Out 2 when she traded her friends for what was more convenient at the moment. Once we got back to the car, she asked, "How was the trip?" And I said, "You didn't even talk to me," and laughed. I laugh when I'm upset or taken aback. Her excuse was, "You seemed upset and like you wanted to be alone." She then asked, "Would you go backpacking again?" And I said, "Yeah, but not with you guys." She said, "Yeah?" Then the entire car ride back I didn't speak to her. She would randomly say things to try and get me to respond, but I ignored her. I was really upset and didn't want to say something I would regret. On top of she ignored me the whole trip because I was inconvenient, so she should be ignored too. I got home and wanted to hide what happened on the trip from my mom, but I couldn't. I tried to pretend it didn't bother me, but it did. Having your fears come to life is the worst thing for anxiety. I was alienated by a group for a weekend and had no cell phone reception. This triggered about a week-long panic episode for me. I'm not sure what to call it. I couldn't stop crying and feeling helpless/worthless/restless. I got dumped a week before this trip and even cried at the dentist's office because that situation was so heavy on me. Paired with this backpacking trip, I just spiraled. I haven't left my house much since this situation happened almost 2 weeks ago because I can't handle too much stimulus or I begin to panic. Here's where Poppy comes in. Aloe, Poppy, and I hang out all the time in carpool. So Poppy wanted to know how the trip went. I called her and told her everything. Poppy has a history of saying things that could be hurtful. For example, she got tipsy and joked that I was unlucky since so many bad situations happened to me, and at that time I had my car broken into. She knows about my abuse and getting kicked out of my home, so that comment hurt me and caused me to spiral. Poppy responded by defending the group and Aloe. She said that she knew she shouldn't defend them, but she continued to. She brought me a drink the next day so I could feel better because I even cried on the phone call. My birthday is coming up, so 3 days after the trip, Poppy gave me a deadline to submit my gift idea to her. I told her I had a hard time focusing because I was having a mental breakdown and spiraling. This conversation was through text BTW. We began chatting about the situation again. Poppy had talked to Phoenix, and even he said he felt bad for me, especially since he invited me. Aloe didn't speak to Poppy yet about it. So Phoenix confirmed how I was isolated. I didn't just feel that way, it was obvious. I told Poppy I was at peace with letting Aloe go since she hadn't contacted me since Yozemi. Poppy advised me to be careful with cutting off people since I'm experienced with doing so. As an example, she brought up how I cut off my ex-boyfriend. Poppy and my ex are close friends, and he told her that he misses me and doesn't know why I cut him off. She brought this up to me to prove a point that people might do something to upset me but aren't aware of the impact. Essentially, she suggested that I reach out to Aloe and let her know why I was upset. I'm not open to that idea since the camping situation was glaringly uncomfortable for me, yet Aloe continued to not speak to me. Poppy continued to make excuses for the situation like Aloe isn't good in social situations, or that the trip was an open invite. It was so invalidating. Then she brought up that it's hard reading my emotions. I tried to create a boundary by asserting that usually I seem upset, but I'm not. I hardly get upset over anything. There are so many social situations where they think I'm upset, but I'm just in my head a lot and more of a listener. I have never actually been upset except when Aloe and Poppy drove me to the gym and stayed almost an extra 2 hours without asking me. So I waited outside for them and snapped at them. I just told them, I didn't think we'd be here this long. I said it in an annoyed tone, but I hardly seemed greatly upset. That situation happened about 2 months before the backpacking trip, and Poppy brought it up twice after we resolved it. She brought it up a third time in this text conversation. She tried to make the point that my emotions are hard to read. I tried to reinforce the boundary I stated. Poppy and Aloe seem to use that excuse when they don't talk to me. It's my fault that they aren't talking to me. I'm upset. I can't deal with people telling me how I feel and I receive the consequences for the misinterpretation. For me trying to enforce that boundary in a neutral tone. Poppy kind of blew up and said we might start arguing. She got annoyed and asked do I wanted to be taken at face value, or do I wanted us to check on me. Then she asked not to be brought into the situation, but I was just trying to set a boundary on how I wanted to be perceived. I mistakenly replied, no one asks, when she mentioned checking on me in social situations. Then she said I'm hella rude for saying that and she's upset with me. She seemed so ready to lash out. I wasn't in the best mind state at the time, so I misspoke. My friends ask me if I'm okay in social situations. It's kind of annoying, but it showed me they care. The question itself, are you okay, bothers me too. I'm just trying to live my life without being reminded of my shortcomings. I guess it's written on my face constantly since my friends always ask that question. I would prefer them just speaking to me normally, and if I act like a BTCH to them, then sure you cannot speak to me. Poppy and I went back and forth for a little. I didn't say anything about her or anything harsh. I just wanted the arguing to stop, so I just apologized and said, I don't have the emotional capacity to keep up with friends anymore, and said I don't need to be invited to things anymore. She apologized and said she wasn't upset anymore and that I shouldn't talk about myself that way. Also, she said, I only got upset because I told you multiple times not to bring me into it. So again, I feel the blame is being put on me. Why is everything my fault? I haven't heard from either friend since. Phoenix reached out to me and sincerely apologized for what happened on the trip, and he validated me. The apology again touched my heart and made me cry. Since Poppy and Aloe caused me to spiral, I don't feel they are ideal friends for me, especially on my journey to heal. I have always been a good friend to both and never had any issues with Aloe until that trip. Now Aloe and Poppy always hang out and stopped inviting me to the gym, which I did ask for, but no one is reaching out even though they know I had a rough time. I know I shouldn't expect it, but if the roles were reversed, I would. I prefer to be alone. I'm the type of person to go to the movies, restaurants, or concerts alone. My friends treated me like a helpless baby sometimes. I should have created boundaries when I first noticed it, 7 to 8 months ago when I moved back, but I didn't think I would lead to a blow-up like this. Poppy is the type of person that always has to be right. Even though she didn't know the details of why my ex and I stopped talking, she spoke as if she knew why and it was my fault. I think it's rude that she brought that up since I stopped speaking to him 5 years ago, and she didn't even let me comment on the situation after she brought it up. I got so triggered by that. In a lot of situations, people conveniently misremember or don't remember things at all. I feel like I'm made to look crazy sometimes. My father and other abusers gaslit me constantly, so I have issues with trusting myself and my memory. Situations like this do not help me. Am I wrong? I know I'm sensitive. LMK, if any more clarification is needed. How is it even cutting someone off if they don't reach out either?